Have you ever dragged a heavy, wet bag of potting soil home from the store, opened it up, and wondered why your plants still end up struggling a few months later? What if I told you that the very foundation you are giving your plants is actually setting them up to fail? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are talking about a massive industry secret that will completely change the way you garden forever. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at those brightly coloured bags of dirt at the home improvement store the same way again. In fact, you will probably refuse to ever buy one again. We are going to expose the paradox of commercial potting mix. Everyone thinks it is the safest, easiest choice for healthy plants, but the reality is completely the opposite. We are going to uncover the hidden truth about what is actually inside those bags, and I guarantee it will shock you. So let me ask you right now, before we dive in, how much money do you think you have spent on bagged soil in your lifetime? Drop a guess in the comments below, and let us see who has been scammed the most. To truly understand this trap, we need to take a quick look back at how we got here. Decades ago, if someone wanted to grow a plant in a pot, they went outside, took some good earth, mixed in some compost or leaf mould, and planted their seeds. It was free, it was natural, and it worked beautifully. But as more people moved into cities and indoor gardening became a massive trend, corporations saw an incredible opportunity. They realised they could package the earth itself, slap a premium label on it, and sell it for a huge profit. They created the concept of the sterile, perfect potting mix. The industry convinced us that natural dirt is dirty, full of diseases, and dangerous for our precious indoor plants. They trained us to believe that the only way to succeed is to buy their scientifically formulated bags. But this convenience came with a massive hidden cost, not just to our wallets, but to the environment and to the health of the plants we are trying to nurture. Let us break down exactly what went wrong and what you are actually paying for. Let us start with the grand illusion of convenience that the gardening industry has sold us for decades. Picture this scenario, which you have probably experienced dozens of times. You decide you want to repot a beautiful houseplant, or maybe you are setting up a small herb garden on your balcony. You drive to the local home improvement store, walk into the garden centre, and are immediately greeted by massive pallets of brightly coloured plastic bags. They have pictures of giant, juicy tomatoes and vibrant, impossible flowers on them. The packaging promises miracles. It says things like moisture control, feeds for 6 months, and premium blend. You heave that heavy, awkward bag into your cart, pay a premium price, and lug it all the way home. It feels like you are doing the right thing. It feels like you are giving your green friends the absolute best start in life. But what if I told you that this entire process is a carefully crafted psychological trap? The truth is, that heavy bag is not filled with life-giving magic. It is mostly filled with cheap fillers, waste products from other industries, and an absurd amount of water. You are quite literally paying for heavy, wet garbage. When you tear open that plastic, you are not unleashing nature. You are unleashing a stagnant, artificially propped up medium that will eventually fail your plants. This is the first big myth we need to shatter today. So, what exactly is hiding inside that expensive bag? If you look closely at the fine print on the back, you will see a list of ingredients that should immediately raise red flags. The vast majority of commercial potting soil does not actually contain any real soil at all. That is right. You are buying soil, less mix. The primary ingredient is almost always peat moss. Now, peat moss is not inherently evil, but in this context, it is used simply because it is incredibly cheap and lightweight when dry. Alongside the peat moss, you will find partially composted forest products. Do you know what that actually means? It is a fancy term for ground-up wood chips, sawdust, and tree bark left over from the lumber industry. These are waste products. They sweep them off the floor of the sawmill, let them sit in a massive pile for a few months, and then sell them to you at a premium. Then they toss in a handful of perlite dust to make it look like there is aeration, and pump it full of synthetic chemical fertilizers. There is no natural biology happening here. There are no beneficial microbes, no earthworms, no life. It is a sterile, dead sponge designed only to hold up the roots of your plant, while the artificial chemicals do all the temporary heavy lifting. Let us talk a little more about that main ingredient, peat moss, because it is the source of a massive environmental disaster that the big soil companies try very hard to hide. Peat bogs are incredible natural ecosystems. They take thousands upon thousands of years to form. They are also one of the most effective carbon sinks on the entire planet, holding onto carbon dioxide and keeping it out of our atmosphere. But to make your cheap bag of potting mix, massive machines rip up these ancient bogs, destroying delicate habitats and releasing all that trapped carbon directly into the air. We are literally strip mining the earth just so you can grow a pothos plant in your living room. It is entirely unsustainable. Every time you buy a bag based heavily on peat moss, you are voting with your dollars for this destruction. The craziest part is that we do not even need it. There are so many sustainable, renewable alternatives available today that actually perform better for our plants. But the industry sticks to peat moss because their massive extraction operations are already in place, and it maximizes their profit margins. It is time we stop funding the destruction of ancient ecosystems for the sake of a minor gardening convenience. Now, let us discuss the nasty surprise that almost always comes free with your purchase of bagged soil. Have you ever brought a new bag of dirt into your home, repotted your favourite plants, and then a week later noticed tiny little black flies buzzing around your face? Those are fungus gnats, and they are the absolute bane of every indoor gardener's existence. Where do they come from? They come directly from the garden centre. Commercial soil bags are typically stored outside on massive wooden pallets. They sit in the rain, they sit in the hot sun, and they sit in the mud. Because they are shipped wet and sealed in plastic, they create the perfect humid breeding ground for pests. The manufacturer might claim the soil was sterilised at the factory, but the moment those bags are stacked outside the store, microscopic tears in the plastic allow fungus gnats to move right in. The gnats lay thousands of eggs inside the damp peat moss. When you bring that bag into your warm, cosy house, those eggs hatch. Suddenly, your entire home is infested, and the larvae start chewing on the delicate roots of your precious plants. Buying commercial soil is like paying money to invite a plague of pests straight into your living room. Here is another fascinating fact that the big brands hope you never figure out. Dirt actually has an expiration date. Well, commercial potting mix does anyway. When you buy a bag that advertises that it feeds plants for 6 months, you are buying a product with a built-in ticking clock. Those little green and yellow balls you see mixed into the dirt are slow-release synthetic fertilizers. Every time you water the plant, the outer coating of those fertilizer balls breaks down a tiny bit, releasing a spike of chemicals into the soil. This forces the plant to grow rapidly at first. It looks amazing for a few months, and you think you are a gardening genius. But exactly around the 6-month mark, those little balls are completely empty. The synthetic food supply is completely cut off because the soil itself is just dead, wood chips and peat moss. There is absolutely zero natural nutrition left to sustain the plant. The plant suddenly hits a brick wall. The leaves turn yellow, growth stops, and it starts to decline. The manufacturer designed it this way intentionally. They want the soil to run out of energy so that you are forced to go back to the store and buy either a new bag of soil or their expensive bottles of liquid chemical fertilizer. Let us dig deeper into the physical properties of what happens to this bagged mix over time. If you have ever forgotten to water a potted plant for a few weeks, you know exactly what I am talking about. When peat moss dries out completely, it undergoes a chemical change and becomes incredibly hydrophobic. That means it actually repels water. You will take your watering can, pour it over the dry, dusty soil, and watch in frustration as the water immediately runs right down the inside edges of the plastic pot and out the drainage hole. The centre of the root ball stays completely bone dry. The water takes the path of least resistance. You might think you just gave your plant a deep soak, but in reality, the roots are still dying of thirst. The peat moss shrinks, pulling away from the sides of the container, turning into a hard, solid brick that is almost impossible to rehydrate without soaking the entire pot in a bucket for several hours. This hydrophobic reaction is a major reason why so many people struggle to keep houseplants alive. They are watering on a schedule, but the cheap soil has physically rejected the moisture. Have you ever considered the sheer weight of what you are actually buying? Let us do some simple math here. When you pick up a large bag of premium potting mix, it often weighs upwards of 40 or 50 pounds. You struggle to get it into your trunk, but the dry ingredients inside that bag, the peat moss, the perlite, and the wood chips, weigh practically nothing. So why is it so incredibly heavy? You are paying for water. The companies soak the mix before sealing it in plastic because it makes the product look dark, rich, and ready to use. It gives the illusion of quality, but functionally you are paying a huge markup and breaking your back to transport gallons of ordinary tap water from their factory to your house. This added moisture also drastically increases shipping costs across the country, which are, of course, passed directly on to you, the consumer. If you were to completely dehydrate a 50-pound bag of commercial soil, you would be left with a surprisingly small pile of fluffy, dusty organic matter that you could lift with one finger. It is a brilliant logistical trick to make you feel like you're getting a lot of value for your hard-earned money. Another massive lie sold by the garden centres is the myth of the one-size-fits-all solution. They sell a universal indoor plant mix and tell you it is perfect for everything. But let us think about this logically. Do you really believe that a tough, desert-dwelling cactus wants to live in the exact same environment as a delicate fern that grows on the humid floor of the Amazon rainforest? Of course not. Plants have evolved over millions of years to thrive in highly specific soil conditions. Tropical plants need moisture retention and rich organic matter. Succulents and cacti need extreme drainage and rocky, sandy environments. A universal bagged soil tries to compromise between everything and ends up being terrible for almost anything. It is usually too dense for a cactus, causing root rot within weeks, and not nutritious enough for a heavy-feeding tropical plant. By buying these pre-mixed universal bags, you are forcing your unique plants into a generic, mediocre environment. To truly succeed, you need to understand that soil is not just a place to put roots. It is a highly specific habitat that needs to be tailored to the exact species you are trying to grow. Let us contrast this commercial disaster with how nature actually handles soil. Take a walk through a healthy, old-growth forest. Nobody is out there sweeping up the leaves or dumping bags of synthetic fertilizer around the trees. Yet, the forest floor is bursting with vibrant, unstoppable life. How does nature do it? It does it through a constant, beautiful cycle of decay and renewal. Leaves fall from the trees, plants die back in the winter, and animals leave behind waste. All of this organic matter piles up on the ground. Then, millions of microscopic organisms, fungi, worms, and insects go to work. They break down that dead material and turn it into rich, dark, beautiful humus. This natural soil is incredibly light, smells like a fresh spring rain, and is packed with every single nutrient a plant could ever need. More importantly, it is alive. The microbes in the soil form a symbiotic relationship with the roots of the plants, actively delivering nutrients in exchange for sugars. This is the secret we need to replicate. We do not need a sterile plastic bag. We need to invite life back into our gardening. So how do we break free from this system? The answer is incredibly simple, incredibly satisfying, and will save you a fortune. You need to start creating your own base material. The heart of any truly great soil is compost, and you do not need a massive backyard or a complicated setup to make it. You can start right in your kitchen. Every time you throw away a banana peel, an apple core, eggshells or coffee grounds, you are throwing away premium plant food. By tossing these kitchen scraps into a simple compost bin, either a small tumbler on your balcony or a dedicated pile in the yard, you are taking the first step toward true gardening independence. You mix those wet, green scraps with dry brown materials like shredded cardboard, dried leaves, or even old newspaper. Over the course of a few months, nature does the exact same thing it does in the forest. It breaks it all down into rich, black gold. This homemade compost is infinitely superior to any bag of dirt you could ever buy. It is uniquely yours, teeming with local beneficial microbes and completely free of charge. If you do not want to wait for compost, or if you need a reliable bulk base for your DIY potting mix right now, it is time to embrace the coconut coir revolution. Cocoa coir is the absolute best alternative to environmentally destructive peat moss. It is made from the fibrous outer husk of coconuts, which is a massive waste product of the global coconut industry. Instead of burning these husks or throwing them in landfills, they are washed, compressed into highly compact bricks, and sold to gardeners. When you buy a brick of cocoa coir, it is dry, lightweight, and very cheap to ship. You take this small brick home, drop it in a bucket of water, and watch in amazement as it rapidly expands to 5 or 6 times its original size. It is incredibly satisfying to watch. Cocoa coir has perfect water retention properties, acting like a sponge that holds moisture without getting soggy. Even better, unlike peat moss, it never becomes hydrophobic. Even if it dries out completely, it will instantly absorb water the second you pour it on. It is a sustainable, superior starting point for any custom soil mix. Now that we have a good base, we need to talk about the most misunderstood aspect of plant care, which is aeration. People focus so much on watering that they forget plant roots actually need to breathe. If the soil is too dense, oxygen cannot reach the roots, and the plant essentially suffocates and drowns, leading directly to the dreaded root rot. Commercial soils use tiny white flecks of perlite for aeration, but they almost never use enough, and the perlite tends to float to the top of the pot over time, rendering it useless. When you mix your own soil, you control the airflow. You can use large, chunky materials that create permanent air pockets throughout the pot. Pumice is an absolutely fantastic choice. It is a highly porous volcanic rock that never breaks down and holds tiny amounts of moisture and oxygen deep inside its structure. You can also use orchid bark, which provides excellent drainage and gives the roots something physical to grab onto. By heavily mixing chunky aeration materials into your compost or cocoa coir, you create a loose, fluffy environment where roots can easily push through and breathe freely. Let us elevate your DIY soil from simply good to absolutely magical. We are going to introduce the ultimate secret weapon of professional organic gardeners. I am talking about worm castings. Yes, that is a polite way of saying worm poop. It might sound a little gross at first, but worm castings are the single most powerful, balanced, and gentle fertilizer on the face of the earth. As earthworms consume organic matter, it passes through their incredibly complex digestive systems. What comes out the other end is fundamentally transformed. It is coated in beneficial enzymes and packed with essential nutrients like nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus. The beauty of worm castings is that, unlike synthetic chemical fertilizers, they will never ever burn your plants, no matter how much you use. You can literally plant a delicate seedling directly into pure worm castings, and it will thrive. Adding just a handful of this black gold to your custom soil mix provides a slow, steady, natural release of nutrients that will keep your houseplants brilliantly green and pushing out new growth for months on end. Let us talk about the underground Internet of Plants. This is a mind-blowing biological process that you will never find in a sterilized bag of commercial dirt. We need to discuss mycorrhizal fungi. This is a very specific type of beneficial fungus that has evolved alongside plants for millions of years. When you introduce mycorrhizal powder to your homemade soil, the fungal spores activate and attach themselves directly to the root system of your plant. They then grow outward into the soil, creating a massive, invisible web of microscopic threads. These threads act as a powerful extension of the plant's own root system. They can reach deep into tiny crevices in the soil that the regular roots could never access, absorbing water and unlocking hidden minerals. In return, the plant feeds the fungus a little bit of sugar from photosynthesis. It is a perfect partnership. Plants grown with mycorrhizal fungi are dramatically more resistant to drought, disease, and transplant shock. By mixing your own soil, you have the power to inoculate it with this living network, giving your plants a superpower that bagged soil completely destroys. One of the greatest joys of making your own soil is the complete freedom to customize. Once you have your basic ingredients, your cocoa coir, your compost, your pumice, and your worm castings, you become a soil chef. You can adjust the recipe on the fly depending on exactly what you are planting. Are you repotting a tropical monstera that loves humidity? Mix up a batch with extra cocoa coir and compost to hold that moisture, but add a few scoops of chunky orchid bark so the thick roots have room to move. Are you planting a collection of desert succulents? Take that same base, drastically reduce the compost, and mix in a massive amount of coarse sand, pumice, and small gravel to ensure the water drains out within seconds. You are no longer reliant on the vague promises of a generic bag. You are tailoring in the exact biological and structural needs of each individual plant. Your plants will respond to this customized care with explosive growth, vibrant colours, and a level of health you simply cannot achieve with a one-size-fits-all commercial product. Let us address a common fear that keeps people chained to buying new bags of soil. The industry tells you that once a plant dies or outgrows its pot, you must throw the old dirt in the trash because it is depleted and full of disease. This is another massive lie, designed to drive continuous sales. Unless the previous plant died of a severe, contagious viral infection, you absolutely do not need to throw that old dirt away. You can easily recycle and revive it. Think of old, dry potting soil as a blank canvas. It has lost its nutrients, sure, but the structure is still there. All you need to do is dump it into a large bin, break up the clumps, and re-amend it. Add a fresh scoop of worm castings to bring the nutrient levels back up. Toss in a little fresh compost to reintroduce microbial life. Maybe add a bit more perlite if it has become too compacted over the years. With just a few simple additions, that dusty, dead dirt is instantly transformed back into premium, living soil. You are closing the loop, reducing waste, and saving even more money. Speaking of money, let us do a quick breakdown of the true cost over time. Let us say a premium bag of commercial soil costs you roughly $20. If you are an active gardener or have a decent houseplant collection, you might buy 10 bags a year. That is $200 spent on wet wood chips and peat moss annually. Over 5 years, you have handed over $1,000 to corporations for dirt. Now let us look at the DIY approach. A giant block of compressed cocoa coir costs about $15 and expands to equal 3 bags of commercial soil. A large bag of coarse pumice might cost $20, but will last you through dozens of mixes. If you are making your own compost, that part is literally free. Even if you splurge on premium worm castings and mycorrhizal inoculants, your initial investment might be $50 or $60, but those bulk ingredients will create mountains of high-quality soil. You are cutting your long-term costs by up to 80% while simultaneously creating a product that is infinitely superior for your plants. The math is undeniably in your favour. There is also a profound difference in how your plants will fight off diseases when they are grown in a living, DIY soil versus a sterile commercial mix. When you buy a sterilised bag of soil, it is a biological vacuum. There are no good guys and no bad guys. But nature abhors a vacuum. The moment a pathogenic fungus or a nasty rot bacteria lands in that sterile pot, it has zero competition. It multiplies rapidly and destroys the plant. However, when you build a living soil with compost and worm castings, you are filling the pot with billions of beneficial microbes. These good guys set up camp, consume the available resources, and fiercely defend their territory. If a disease spore lands in your living soil, it has nowhere to go. It is outcompeted and destroyed by the healthy microbiology before it can ever attack your plant's roots. By trying to be perfectly clean and sterile with commercial soil, we are actually stripping away the plant's natural immune system. Living soil acts as an active shield, protecting your garden 24 hours a day. Let me share a very clear, real-life example of the difference this makes. Last spring, I decided to run a direct side-by-side experiment. I took 2 identical tomato seedlings of the same variety. I planted the first one in an expensive brand-name bag of moisture-control potting soil. I planted the second one in a simple homemade mix of cocoa coir, homemade compost, and pumice. For the first month, they looked pretty similar, thanks to the synthetic fertilizer spike in the bagged soil. But by month 3, the difference was staggering. The plant in the commercial bag had yellowing lower leaves, required constant watering because the peat moss had turned rock hard, and produced a handful of mediocre tomatoes. The plant in the homemade living soil was a massive, deep green jungle. The root system was so thick and healthy that it held water perfectly, and it produced more than double the amount of fruit. The living soil provided a constant, steady stream of natural nutrition that the synthetic dirt simply could not match. It was all the proof I ever needed to see. Ultimately, moving away from bagged soil is about more than just saving money or having prettier plants. It is about a fundamental shift in your mindset as a gardener. When you buy a bag from the store, you are just a consumer. You are relying on a corporation to solve a problem for you, and they do it in a way that keeps you dependent on them. But when you start making your own soil, you step out of the consumer cycle and become a creator of life. You learn to read the texture of the earth. You understand how organic matter breaks down. You appreciate the unseen, microscopic world that makes all life on Earth possible. You gain a deeper, more profound connection to the plants you are growing because you literally built the foundation they stand on with your own hands. It takes a little bit of learning and a little bit of practice, but the reward is total independence. You will never again have to lug a heavy, leaking plastic bag of useless fillers into your home. You hold the power of nature right there in your own hands. And there you have it, the absolute truth about the great gardening lie. We have uncovered the dark secrets hiding inside those colourful plastic bags, from the ecological destruction of peat bogs and the horror of fungus gnat infestations, to the scam of paying premium prices for heavy, wet wood chips. More importantly, we have revealed the ultimate pivot. By understanding the power of cocoa coir, aeration, homemade compost, and worm castings, you possess the knowledge to create a living, breathing ecosystem right in your own pots. You are now equipped to save hundreds of dollars, protect the environment, and watch your plants explode with health and vitality in a way commercial dirt could never achieve. The secret to an unbelievable garden is no longer locked away in a big box store. It is right there in your hands, ready to be mixed. Thank you so much for watching and for being willing to look past the marketing myths. If this video changed the way you think about potting soil, please hit that subscribe button, leave a massive like, and share it with a fellow plant lover. Now, I want to hear from you. Are you going to try mixing your own soil this weekend? Or what is the craziest thing you have ever found hidden inside a bag of commercial potting mix? Let me know in the comments below and let us get the discussion started.